The biggest thing to me, Rick, is that most people are in denial
Mm,
of the problems they have.
yep.
Denial is the number one thing because until you realize that there's a belief system that you have that is preventing you from having something in your life,
Yeah.
and you just look at the results, like look at your reality, your results, whatever results you have, that's what you're committed to.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Fan of Life podcast, Fan of Life show. Today, I'm super excited to introduce you to Moussa Mikhail. He is a podcast host. His podcast is called the Conqueror Approach Podcast. And he helps dive into the psychology of success, what makes people successful, the things they need to overcome to be able to become successful. And today, I got new phrase to my vernacular, and that phrase is emotional intelligence. I'll have him introduce you to that as well and have him articulate that because obviously he'll do a lot better job than I will. But Musa is an entrepreneur. He's a Navy vet. He's been deployed in submarine duties. I think that's probably a 1% of the one percenters in the military that's ever been dispatched and deployed with submarine activities. So I was really excited to hear about that and learn about that as well too. So without further ado, allow me to introduce you to Moussa Mikhail. Moussa, what's up, buddy? How are you?
I'm doing great, Rick. Thank you for having me, brother.
Dude, thank you for coming on. I know you got a lot of irons in the fire, dude. And I know you do a lot of things, have done a lot of things, and just hearing about, some of your activities, I'm exhausted. But one of the things I wanted to dive in today is not only to get to know you, but get to know your mission. But you might be the first person I know that's ever worked in a submarine. So you have a Navy background. You worked in a submarine, correct?
Yes, I did, man. It's a small world for submariners because I think 1% of population's in the military, and
Right.
then of that, like a small percentage is in the Navy, and then of the Navy, very small percentages on submarines. And it's a completely different world to be in, man. And it's been a journey for me. It's something I didn't even want to do, and I was actually really afraid to be on a submarine. It was like the last thing I wanted to
Sure.
do. And somehow I ended up in it, and I just decided to give it everything I had and try to win over my mind of being afraid. And I was creating a lot of that fear just cuz I like being outside and I don't want to be in confinement in a tube
Right.
or underwater. And I've made up a lot of fear for myself. So that's when I really started my journey of growth and development, and developing my mindset, man, because I realized that I thought I was claustrophobic, but I wasn't. I was just being afraid.
Sure.
And once I realized it was just fear that was
Mhm.
making my body react. I was able to continue doing what I needed to do.
So how did you get coerced, or how did your path go into the submarine direction? Because obviously you enlisted in the Navy. How old are you when you enlisted?
Technically, I was 17.
Okay.
And the only two jobs that they presented me were two submarine jobs.
Okay.
And my recruiter was pretty much, yeah, man, just sign the contract with one of those jobs and we'll be able to change it before you go to boot camp.
Uh,
And he wasn't completely lying. However, I really wanted a security clearance when I joined the military. That's kind of one of the
mhm.
reasons why I joined. And the jobs he offered me didn't have that. And I thought this was going to be more challenging being on a
Yeah.
submarine, which it definitely was. But I ended up getting the clearance I wanted by being on a submarine, and I just stuck with it. I had a lot of time before boot camp, and I was
Hmm.
just really thinking, preparing myself for it. And I had a whole year of training before I actually stepped foot on a submarine. So it was a long journey before I even got to do anything on a submarine.
Well, I'll live vicariously through you then, because I'll tell you what, when I found that out about you, I was just like, I'm not claustrophobic, I don't think, but just hearing about it made me claustrophobic, man. And the fact that you're underwater too throws a different element. But thank you for your service, thank you for enlisting, and mad respect out to that. So kind of we're kind of jump all over the place, but the fact that you said it was an opportunity for you to kind of face your fears and dive into your fears. Was that kind of like the genesis for you starting your path? Because I love what you talk about, conquering yourself, conquering, within the battles within. Is that where you kind of started to really analyze psychology in terms of, how to succeed, things of that nature?
Absolutely, man. And dude, to be completely honest, I never completed a book like from front to like
Hmm.
cover to cover until I was on a submarine. Like I never had the attention span for it.
Yeah.
So definitely I started reading a lot. But before I started reading, I was curious to see like how come some people are doing okay and
Hmm.
some people are having a terrible experience, and there's some people who are just like whatever,
Right.
uh, like no emotion. And that was me for a little bit.
Sure.
But I was curious to see like why is someone else having a decent time or a good time, or they're not stressed out even though they're on a submarine for many months as well. You
Hmm.
know, their job, they're working insane hours as well. But they're able to keep smiling and keep themselves optimistic and positive. And I found that interesting, and it really took me to be curious for what what are they doing to manage their stress. Um, it's very easy to make excuses for other people, like, oh, they don't have to do what I have to
Right.
do. And there's a lot of different jobs, and some of them are worse, in my opinion, than others.
Hmm.
However, there's still the main things are we're all isolated. We're still underwater. There's no internet. There's no
Right.
windows. There's no interaction with the outside world. There's no I get to go to Starbucks and get my latte. There's no there's none
Yeah.
of that, right? So it made me interested. I started reading. I think the first book I read was Rich Dad Poor Dad,
Okay.
and it just sparked me because I realized like what wealthy people do, what really successful people do, and why they become that way is they never stop learning, they never stop growing, they never
Mm.
stop improving their selves. And I realized that I didn't know anything, and I was like, wow, like I really need to start learning some
Right.
stuff. And that's really what started helping me uh, be interested in reading more books and that stuff. And then it came to the real stuff, man. Like I didn't want to be miserable. I was really stressed out. I was angry a lot of the times. I didn't
Mm.
I didn't do anything with it, but I was frustrated, and I would just keep it all in. And I realized it wasn't helping me physically. I was becoming drained, and then throughout my military career, I went through burnout, and then by the time I was done, I was like drained,
Mm.
and that was mostly due to I had no emotional intelligence before joining the military. I just kind of shut down and kept quiet and suffered in silence without actually understanding like what's happening to my body. How can I control my body with my thoughts instead of just being a victim in the circumstance,
Mm.
and say, oh, that well, I can't leave because I'm stuck in a submarine. How can I make it productive? How can I learn? How can I grow? And how can I do everything I can do now so that I can look back and say I didn't waste those months? Because some people, their goal when we're underwater, we're just like, how many movies can I watch?
Right. Right.
Which is cool, right? Because they want to pass the time. It's like their way to decompress. But for me, that wasn't going to be fulfilling. It would
Right.
feel like I'm wasting time. So for me, it was like, how many books can I read?
Right.
And I challenge myself on all my deployments to just read as much as I possibly can. So if I wasn't working, I was reading or listening to podcasts that I downloaded before, and that just it never stopped because every time I learned something, I realize how much I don't know. Right, the more you
Right.
know, or the more you learn, the more you learn of things that you just don't know of, or your just curiosity expands, and you're like you realize how much you don't know. I
Yeah.
think. I forget
Yeah.
the expression, but I think it's like the more you know you don't know.
Correct. Correct.
Right? So
And you hit on something really important, man, and I don't want to just gloss over it. And for you, it sounds like your journey or your evolution started with the mind, right? Start with changing your mentality, your perspective, and you started that with books. I heard somewhere, and I think it's very poignant. Reading is condensing years into months, right? You're condensing other people's life experiences and what have you. And whether it's business, relationship, money, mindset perspective changes all that. It changes your belief system. So do you think that belief system is the genesis or the center of changing someone's life, is they have to change their belief system?
Yeah, man, because underlying everything we do, all the habits, everything we do, even our thoughts that we're not even aware of, everything that takes place in our life
Mm,
is linked to some type of belief. Whether that's a belief that I have to do this to fulfill a certain need, or that I believe something about myself, like I'm dumb, or I'm never going to be wealthy, or I'm never going to be successful, or I'm never going to do the things that I want to do. All those things are very subconscious. They
mm,
happen without us even realizing it. And this is why I took so much time to learn about emotional intelligence, because most of the things we do is an emotional reaction to the stimulus around us.
mm,
And that happens before our conscious mind can even figure it out. Right. And that's the whole idea of emotional intelligence, is understanding what stimulus triggers a certain response in my body. And that made me more aware of, like, well, I don't have to be angry right now, and I can have a different dialogue in my mind to reframe my situation. And you said it, man, it's perspective. And
yeah.
that's the whole thing about becoming a better version of myself, was how can I change my perspective? Dude, it started with Hawaii traffic. Because it took me 45 minutes to go like 5 miles.
Yeah.
How can I change my perspective, though? People complain about traffic every single day. I didn't have any problem with it, because I just listened to audiobooks. And I was like,
Right.
this is the most productive part of my morning.
Right. Right.
Right. So it's the perspective of everything. When I don't really like doing manual labor,
Hmm.
but as much as I can when I'm doing any manual labor, I just try to make it like a workout, or try
Yeah.
to think of it as like, all right, well, I'm working out and moving, and that changes the perspective even just a little bit, to make it not bad. It doesn't
Sure.
have to be negative. And that's what happens. It's our dialogue, it's our perception of the situation that
Hmm.
makes it negative or positive. And everything is inherently meaningless until we assign meaning to it. And that
Right.
meaning comes from our belief systems, our beliefs about ourselves, our beliefs about others, and our beliefs about the world. And it doesn't really change until you take a look at it and face it. Like,
Hmm.
what do I believe about myself, and really look into it, and do work, because it's work, because the subconscious mind has been
Yeah.
developed, mostly when we're little kids, from what we see, and that's where our belief systems start to develop mostly. And it takes a lot of work in our adulthood to
Yeah.
break that up, and identify what are the patterns that keep me stuck. They're based off belief systems, because those beliefs lead me to do an action, and that action leads me to have confirmation to
Right.
my belief that I have already. And this is kind of what made me so curious when I was reading about rich dad, poor dad, because it
Hmm.
was the poor beliefs versus the rich beliefs, and this is
Right.
how rich people think, and this is how poor people think. And it was just like, wow, I was living my entire existence understanding the poor side.
Right.
And it just, for me, it applied to everything, not just money, richness in health, richness in just life, and like being happy, being at peace, rich in relationships. And that was just like, man, I never stopped. Like, to this day, I'm just learning about the mind, the habits, the belief systems, and how to shape it, because it can change based off what we hear, listen, and see,
Sure.
and
Sure.
what we do.
And I think as you evolve as a person too, you need new information, right? I mean, you're not going to be the same person you are today, 10 years from now, hopefully, because I think we all should be evolving and growing. I think one of the things I hear a lot, even with myself and some of my old peers, is, dude, you're not the same guy I knew 15 years ago. And
Good.
whether they mean as a compliment, probably not. But I take it as a compliment, because it's like, yeah, we're not supposed to be the same person, right? You're not supposed to be the same guy that enlisted in the Navy. You're the guy that has evolved. So let me ask you this, studying humans, studying people, what do you think is the biggest obstacle in people changing their belief system? I know a lot of it, like we talked about, or you were talking about, is childhood experiences and stuff like that. What is the thing that hold people back from changing the belief system? And then if you were helping somebody, what would be the first step in breaking away from an old belief system, in your opinion?
The biggest thing to me, Rick, is that most people are in denial of the problems they have. Denial is the number one thing, because until you realize that there's a belief system that you have that is preventing you from having something in your life.
Yeah.
And you just look at the results. Like, look at your reality, your results. Whatever results you have, that's what you're committed to, whether it's good or bad. If you're not at the weight you want to be, those are results based off decisions, based on actions, and a lot of times unconscious, right? So being in denial, it's tough. David Goggins talks like, that's like the first thing he talks about is being completely honest with a lot of F words in between.
Sure.
With yourself. And that's the number one part. That part to become honest and aware is self-awareness, though. So could say self-awareness is the first step. And I talk about self-awareness plenty in my podcast, because you can't really know what you don't know, right? You don't know what you don't know. And I think one of my favorite quotes by the psychiatrist Carl Jung, he's like, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will run your life, and you'll call it fate. So how can you become more aware? Is really take inventory of your life. I'm not where I want to be right now. Why is where am I not hitting the mark? Let's say if it's in my relationships, if my relationships suck, I need to look, what am I doing? Where am I missing the mark here?
Right.
What am I contributing to that? A lot of people would just blame the other person.
Sure.
Because it's easier. Because you don't have to change.
Right.
You could blame the boss for being an asshole, or whatever the case is. You could blame the coworkers for not doing as much as you. You could always blame someone. And I'm guilty of it too sometimes. And, and this is what the practice is recognizing when I'm trying to pretty much reflect or deflect all responsibility from myself. And it's easier, right? Because we just want to take the path to least resistance.
Yeah.
And when you confront yourself, you're gonna hit a lot of resistance.
Right.
Your brain does not want to change the way it's going. Change the pathways of electricity that are already, established in your brain.
Yeah.
So becoming self-aware, and you don't have to do it alone. This is the thing that I struggled with, and I still do, is trying to figure it out by myself.
Right.
You are the only person that can't see yourself 100% clearly. And this is why it's important to have other people who are willing to evaluate, to reflect, and give you feedback. And this is why people hire coaches. This is why people have those type of relationships with people, whether it's a mentorship or something like that. Because normally they're friends. They're not going to give you the feedback that you need to hit the next level.
Right.
Because generally you attracted those type of people who are around the same energy frequency as you are.
Right. Right.
And then that's when you start getting outside mentorship and doing outside work, then that becomes the Rick. I don't recognize this Rick anymore.
Sure.
He's not playing in my arena anymore.
Yeah.
He went to a bigger arena.
Yeah.
And that's when they think you change, or they try to, say all those things. But, that's the path to growth is changing that. So,
and that's the uncomfortable path to growth, let me add, because I think a lot of people, there is a certain guilt of feeling that, if I do this and I expand and I go to a different segment of people, different group, different mentorships, I'm leaving other people behind. And it doesn't have to be that way. You could bring along people that want to come. You can't drag them along. They're going to want to come or not. But part of success that I've learned and I've seen, and you just, articulate it very well, is that you have to not just grow within yourself, but you have to expand, who your connections are, who your network is, because the mentorships, things like that, because those are the people who will bring additional value that will enhance your life. And, your friends is your friends, and especially family, because you can't choose family. but they may not always, and not on purpose, but they may not always be the best surroundings for you if you're trying to grow. And that sometimes is the hardest for people to recognize, that is to, you gotta, advance and grow your network of people. And you described that brilliantly. Have you ran into that situation where you run into people and you're kind of like, man, 20 years later, you're still talking about the same thing. I'm not saying that I'm better or I'm worse, but it's like, what have you been? Where have you been? What have you done? How come the conversation is still the same? Have you experienced that?
Oh yeah. 100%. And that's just, I think that's the reality,
Yeah.
because most people aren't going to do what it takes to grow at a significant level. Everyone's going to try to stay in their comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
I went to high school in a small city, in a small town in New Jersey. I'm from Vegas originally, but I went to high school there. And I remember talking to a guy who's in the army. He retired, and he was like, going into military is going to be really good for you, because you're going to experience a lot of things and travel and do all these things. And you're going to come back to this town 5-10 years later, and everyone's going to be doing the same thing.
Yeah.
And I laughed about it, but it was true. If I visited, I haven't visited in years now, but I'm sure the people are doing the same thing. And it's just habit. It is just habit. And that is, I've seen it so many times. I've seen it in my family. And like you said, man, I think from my experience, family is one of the biggest hindrances for people's growth.
Definitely can be.
Because
Definitely
they triggered those belief systems. And a lot of people, because they sometimes not like they want to do this to you, but because they care so much, they tried to transfer their fear onto you.
Yeah.
Their fear of failure, their fear of not being good enough. And they tried to convince you to take their fear on, so you don't take on things, so you don't fail or whatever. But it's okay to fail. It's okay to move. I think everyone should move out of their town that they grew up in
100%.
for a significant period of time, not 3 weeks, but like years, right? You need to see different areas. You need to see different cultures, especially. This helps you expand, because then you start realizing that small world that I was in, it's not that small. It is bigger.
Yeah.
And you start attracting new people. And like you said, subconsciously, we fear of outgrowing people we care about. And that's where we need to add some perspective. Because yes, we can outgrow people, but what kind of greater relationships are you going to attract in your life by becoming a better person?
Yes.
Because your relationships are a direct reflection of you. And as you grow, your relationship quality grows.
Yeah.
And the people you start meeting grow. And it's not like, oh, I'm leaving my old friends behind. It's no, who am I going to meet that energizes me, that pushes me, that inspires me to do more, and challenges me. I see some of my friends and they're doing amazing things, and I'm just like, wow, like that's awesome. Like, it's possible, and I want to be around those people more who make me think bigger.
Right. I agree. And it's one of those things where it's like, as corny as it sounds, man, it's like, if everyone is agreeing or doing the path that you're doing, chances are it's the wrong path, right? Because the right path, the successful path, the 1%er path, they're the path that are least traveled for a reason, because it's hard, it's against the grain, it's not the norm. And, we're all speaking English and everything like that. But I tell people all the time, within finance, within success, within business, you talk to somebody successful, it's a different language. They're speaking English, but it's a completely different language. The vocabulary they use, the words they use, it's important. So going back to what you're saying, man, that expansion of your knowledge and people is awesome. I love conversations like this because I try to listen to the words you use. And I love earlier, to go back on it, you said emotional intelligence. So give me something tangible. So before your emotional intelligence, before you dove into how to handle your reactions, things like that, let's say you got cut off on the highway, how would the old you react compared to now? Just something that tangible and that simple, because I want people to realize that it's the little things, right?
Yeah,
what are you thinking?
Driving is like the best way to practice a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, man.
Because you think no one's like seeing you, but when I used to get really angry if someone cut me off, this dumbass, or get mad.
Sure.
And sometimes it still frustrates me. But then I changed the perspective. So as soon as I notice, right, because my body changes physiologically, like I get warmer and whatnot, I just reframe. This guy, he's just being reckless or whatever. Like the common one, like I don't know where he's going.
Yeah.
A lot of people in Vegas, there's a lot of stoplights, so people will like come in cutting traffic and stuff, and then they end up at the same stoplight.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm just like, whatever. Like you're just gonna end up at that light, because there's nowhere to go. You're just going nowhere fast. But then I think one of the best things I've learned for emotional intelligence actually comes from Thich Nhat Hanh, who
Okay. The Buddhist?
incredible, yeah, the Buddhist Zen master.
Mm.
Like he said something along the lines of, when you truly understand, you can't be angry. You can only have compassion.
Mm.
So I try to understand it. Like if now when I see people driving, because it's so often where people just drive like that, I try to understand that in their mind, they think they're getting somewhere faster or whatever the case is. Maybe they're in a hurry or not, but they think they're really making quick moves that get them to their place a few minutes early, and understanding human psychology. Like most people are more concerned about themselves,
Mm.
and I understand that, and I understand that people aren't really thinking big picture, or they're not looking that far ahead. They're just kind of doing what's right in front of them. uh it's like I have compassion, and not
Mm.
always, but
Right.
when I remember this, and because I read it and listened to it in one of his books, I can recall it in
Mm.
those moments, and it happens very fast. Like if it happens, I just think, Thich Nhat Hanh.
Good for
Like,
you, man.
like how can I understand this? And when you take this approach, you're always going to try to understand more.
Yeah.
If someone curses you out for whatever reason and you think it's totally uncalled for, if you're like, if a rude customer is being an asshole or something, and then you really truly understand, like, well, what caused him to be upset? What triggered him to be upset?
Right.
Why is he in so much emotional pain to begin with, so that something like this that I see is really small and insignificant triggered him to be this upset?
Right.
What abuse did he have so far
Right.
back? What emotional trauma did he go through so that a little thing like, where's my mustard on my hamburger, like, flips out?
Right.
People flip out over crazy stuff sometimes, and you think it's insignificant, but that little thing triggered their emotional abuse when they were a child and their mom beat
It's
them up
never
with a
that
mustard
thing.
bottle or something.
Yeah, it's never that thing, right? That
Yeah.
is just a accumulation of whatever, God knows what, in that person's life. It's never that thing. And I think, you're saying basically empathy is the cure for anger. If you have enough empathy for people, you take a step back, you go, wow, what life experiences does this person have? It gives you a lot of pause. So that's great. I think, empathy going across the board for people, I think, will help build better relationships, better understanding, especially in this climate where we feel so divided all the time. I think the empathy is lacking, and you explaining it that way is so important. I actually got to read his book. I've known about the Buddhists for a while because, of my Asian culture. A lot of my family have read a lot of his books. So I'll definitely do that per your recommendation. So let me ask you this, my friend. You're really strong into the world of self-development, self-improvement, and you want to educate and help people. So let me ask you where we are right now. If you had the megaphone to the world and you want to give, Musa's, tidbit or advice or hope or wish for the world, what would it be? I know it's a very big, broad question, but if you had the megaphone to the world and you had everyone's attention, what would you like to share in terms of how to better what we got going on right now?
Well, that's a big question, man, because I keep thinking about, I keep getting tidbits of what I try to not involve myself with so much what's going on in the world, but it's hard not to when you're
Sure.
living in it. Man, I would say there's so much I want to say, but I'll try to condense it into whatever is happening outside of your control is outside of your control. So decipher what you can do and what empowers you. Sitting and complaining about something, government, politics, whatever the case is, that doesn't empower you to do anything.
Right.
That just that just steals your power, it steals your energy, it steals your focus, and it steals your attention. And those are all the things that you need to empower yourself to become better. So it's not so much that what's happening in the world or what's happening outside of my control. No matter what time in history, there was a lot of things happening outside people's control.
Right.
And it's what you focus on. What are you focusing on? Are you focusing on how can I improve myself? How can I improve my resiliency? How can I put armor on so that these things don't bother me, so they don't steal my energy and steal my emotion? When something triggers you, when something upsets you, and I still struggle with anger and these things sometimes, when something upsets you, that thing becomes your master. Period.
Powerful.
If a single person pisses you off and they can control you from your inside out, they could control your heart, your mind, your body. They have control over you. In essence, they have control over you. If I could say something that I know is going to piss you off and I say it and I get a reaction and you start sweating and you start,
Right.
you start like football fans, for instance, if you go to Raiders Stadium,
Yeah.
and you say, screw the Raiders to a Raiders fan, you might get a reaction. Well, that person has more power over you if they can get you to act that way. And like, man, that was one of the biggest things I learned. If I allow something or someone to control my emotions, that person or that thing ultimately controls me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to be controlled by anything. No, I want to have that. I want to have mastery over myself, and that's what the whole journey of self-mastery is about. Is if someone says something doesn't affect me that way. Not saying things don't affect me. I'm still working on this every day, but it's the practice. If and politician season, with the election season was great practice because I didn't really get upset either way very much. And I practiced the empathy, try to understand why people believe, where did their beliefs really stem from in their childhoods and what experiences, because ultimately that leads to someone choosing a side and like then fighting over it and doing all that nonsense. But if we let anyone or anything to elicit that kind of emotion from us, that's our soul right there. Yeah. Our emotion is our soul. So if something can have that kind of stronghold, if you wish, on your emotions, that thing controls you. And I don't want silly things to control me because life is precious and time is precious. The main thing I learned when I was in a submarine was time is precious. I leave, I come back 6 months later. That's a long time.
Yeah.
Time is precious. I missed out 6 months of life on Earth.
Yeah.
Oh, not technically, but I was still here, but not really.
No, I know.
Yeah. So when I'm in my deathbed, am I going to remember that argument or that thing that person said? No, chances are if someone offended you right now, you're probably going to forget about it in a week or two.
Sure.
Right? Unless you hold on to it. And if you're holding on to it, that person still has control over you.
Yeah.
And they probably don't even remember it themselves.
Right.
Right? Like they've moved on and you're still holding on to it. And this is emotional intelligence. It's real life stuff, man. We get offended, we get pissed off, we get disrespected by people we care about. Even if they're not doing it openly, they didn't clean the dishes, means they don't care about me, or whatever. That little slight being offended, it doesn't have to control you.
Right.
There's a better way to approach it. There's a better way to communicate it, and it doesn't have to control my soul, if you wish.
So don't give up your sovereignty. You're giving up your will, your power to somebody if you allow them to anger you and dictate how you react. That's beautifully stated, dude. So let me change gears a little bit because I want to end on a high note. I want to ask you, what are you excited about for you personally? Feel free to share what you feel comfortable in sharing. And then what do you, as hopefully an optimist, see human beings and your hope for humanity in general? So first is, what are you excited about for you? And then what is your hope for humanity?
I'm excited. I'm excited for this year overall and some of the projects that I'm working on. I'm definitely excited for the Conqueror Approach podcast. I took some time off just kind of for myself. I
Mhm.
think I needed to just again reflect and be with myself. But I'm excited about the podcast and some of the meditation groups that I'm going to be participating with, and trying to give actionable tools and through meditation and some of that stuff to help people with emotional intelligence. And it's
Mm.
it's in the moment. How can I be aware and feel what I'm feeling, and then free myself from that so I can achieve flow in my life. And for humanity, it's it's interesting because I believe I believe everything is going to be better. And I believe a lot of these things, a lot of the problems we face and challenges we face, they're going to always be present.
Yeah.
And I have to make the decision. What's more important in my life as a human being? To focus on the shortcomings, the issues, the problems, the challenges, or focus on the beauty of life.
Yeah.
And I think at some point when we have more conversations like these and we start communicating these type of emotional intelligence teachings, and more schools and more people are getting meditation as part of like a healthy way to process how I'm feeling and life, uh, from a young age, they can start applying that when they're stressed out, so they're not, eventually lowering crimes and lowering
Yes.
suicide and lowering those things because it's a tool. Meditation's a huge tool, and I feel like the more these conversations reach people across the world,
Mhm.
they realize I can I can always be better depending on what I focus on and what I attribute my time to, and how aware am I being. So eventually it's going to be, I think, a long time, but I'm only focused on who can I affect now.
Yeah.
And there's a ripple effect in that, right? Like whoever hears this podcast, if they're influenced by it, they're going to influence their inner circle, and their inner circles are going to influence other people, and it's going to keep going.
Yep.
And that's what gets me excited about these things, because I might not be able to see the impact right now or
Right.
tomorrow, but if someone sparked to read Thich Nhat Hanh, and they learn how to meditate, and they learn how to have compassion for people, and they learn how to control their anger, and they have that self-awareness, and they have that hunger for knowledge, their lives are going to transform. And by that transformation, they're going to transform many other lives. So my hope for humanity is to just not lose faith, and myself included, because sometimes I'm like, ooh, man, there's no faith in
Yeah.
humanity. Like, there's no hope. I don't know where we're going. Like, there might as well just like apocalypse happen right now.
Right.
But
Right.
that's obviously not the highest level of vibration, and I believe in that. I believe there is more to come. I believe our best days are still ahead of us,
Right.
and that's what keeps me going. Just having faith that we weren't created on this earth just to be miserable, hate each other, suffer and die, and pay bills. Like there's more. There's more to life. And the thing I've discovered for, I think, millions of years of evolution, the highest level of expression and connection was between people,
Yes.
and those relationships of love, friendships, intimacy. And that's what I think at the end of the day we're going to need more of that to keep us going.
That's why we're doing what we're doing, man. And I concur everything you just said. I do have a lot of faith in humanity. I think we are. I think if you look at human beings and just animals in general, right? We always have a fight or flight because it's built in us, right? It's to survive. It's to survive. And I think our radars, hardwired, our radars are always looking for trouble. And in the developed Western world, compared to a lot of different places, there aren't a lot of trouble compared to other places, especially in America. I mean, trust me, there are challenges, but comparative, you ever travel the world, you know what I'm talking about. So I think psychologically, a lot of the news media outlets, they understand this. So they understand that they feed the negativity, that antenna, that human antenna for bad news, bad environment, bad events. it gets really honed in and we get sucked in because there's a part of us, I think, that is hardwired to look for bad things and almost need to find bad things. But if we can reprogram ourselves, and going back to what you were talking about, emotional intelligence, going full circle, emotional intelligence, understanding yourself, conquering yourself, and realizing that it's a conscious decision not to fall trap of that. And I think that will enhance your life individually, and that will enhance the people around you. And we keep this part of going, man. And this is why we do what we do, brother. So,
Absolutely, man. And one thing to
yeah,
add
please,
on to that, man.
please.
I know I kind of mentioned it earlier, but whatever has your attention has you
Yep.
at the end of the day. And
Yes,
if you
sir.
can remember that, you'll always strive to give your attention to something more productive and effective, and more fulfilling for you.
Yep.
Just remember, whatever has your attention has you. And the news, they just want to get your attention, right?
That's
That's most marketing, right?
it.
If
Yep.
anywhere we go, marketing is about how can I grab your attention? How can I hold your
Mhm.
attention? Social media, YouTube, all those things. How can I hold your attention? TV in general, how can I keep your attention?
Yep.
And you have to make that conscious choice where I'm going to give my attention to something that's going to help me become better, not just make me live in fear.
Amen, brother. Amen. Hey, I look forward to seeing the evolution of you, your podcast, your ventures. We're definitely going to have to check in on a consistent basis, man. I love seeing people's journeys like this. And the more we can share your story, your mission, I think it's going to benefit everybody. So please plug yourself. Let everyone know where they can find you, your podcast, etc. I'll be sure to link everything in the description as well. But the floor is yours. Go ahead and plug yourself, please.
Likewise, brother, man. I feel the same way. Again, I'm on social media at Moussa Mikhail, and my podcast is on every podcast platform, The Conqueror Approach, and it's also on YouTube. So yeah, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm always open to hearing people's feedback, and connecting with others, because this is what this is all about.
Yes, sir.
It's about helping people on their journey to self-mastery, right? The quote I use is Plato's quote from thousands of years ago: the first and best victory is to conquer self. And that's what I have control over. I can control myself. I can work on myself. I can't control all the craziness in the world.
I cannot add to that, my friend. I thank you greatly. I look forward to seeing you again. And are you in Vegas now?
Yes, I am.
We're gonna have to connect. We're gonna have to
Absolutely.
connect. We'll break bread and we'll share some war stories and share some ideas coming up soon. But for now, I'll say goodbye and I will post all the information. You guys go check him out. The man's for real. And I thank you so much for your time, brother.
Thank you, man. My honor.
Appreciate it.